Hello everyone, this is the second part of optimization tutorial and it's gonna be an extension for the first one. Before viewing this part I would recommend you to watch first part, it will grant you much more FPS than this one. Let's open a way you creating a foliage. In my case it's PCG, but everything that I'm gonna describe on a PCG will work for you if you are using a foliage editor here. So let's open a static mesh spawner here, and we have some parameters that we can change that will help us optimize our foliage, or whenever you're building with a foliage. Here we have a parameter called instance start cull distance and end cull distance. This is a distance on which this mesh stops being rendered. So as you can see, for example, let me navigate here. I have a boulder and it is drawn until I'm on a distance less than 20,000, and when I move far it stops rendering. Also, you may notice how my trees also stop rendering, but not all of them. I want a forest to be visible from afar, so I just changed a cull distance for 50% of trees. Okay, now I would recommend you to use start cull distance and then cull distance for every mesh you have, even if this value is gonna be very high. It's better than having a zero here. Next parameter is world position offset disable distance. Okay, we have a world position offset material function, and or whenever we are evaluating world position offset, especially for foliage to simulate wind. Almost every foliage that you will download from a marketplace or megascans will have a world position offset, and it allows our leaves to move a little bit more realistic, but it requires a lot of resources to evaluate. So this parameter allows us to disable evaluating this world position offset function only on some distance around the player, only in 5,000 radius. So my tree that is far than 5,000 will not evaluate world position. Like you can see how my bush is evaluating, but on this distance it already stopped moving. So now it is not evaluating world position offset. It's not visible for a player, but it saves you a lot of resources. Also, all these parameters can be set it up not only for an static mesh. It can be also set on an actor. Let me open, for example, my blueberry actor. Here it is, and here on an actor you may found. Let me type in, not on an actor, on static mesh. No, render distance should be something like this. Where it is. Okay, it's not for an actor, it's for a static mesh component in an actor. You have an LOD section here, and you have a min draw distance, desired max draw distance, and it's the same as cull distance. Also, it should have a world position offset. Yes, also it have a world position offset disable distance here. In rendering section, where it is, this rendering here. Here is a rendering section, and you can change world position offset here. Well, next thing that I would like to talk about is nanites. By the way, after an introduction of nanites by Epics, a lot of people started to use them, but nanites is not a panacea. And nanite is a solution, but in most cases it's a solution when you don't have other solutions. So don't use nanites if you can use LODs. Only use nanites if you have meshes with, for example, 500,000 polygons or million polygons and so on, and you don't have a choice to replace them with a less polygon models, because nanites is a is a totally new rendering technique, and it will not give you such big growth of FPS when you're using instances. Now let's talk a little bit about LODs for meshes. Let me open, so for example, some of my bushes. I'm gonna open hazelnut. And as you can see, it has 37,000 of triangles. And it doesn't have an LODs by default. Well, if you want to add LODs by yourself, but you're not gonna use any modeling tools, you can generate them by Unreal. So here on LOD settings, you can find a field called number of LODs, and you can change it. By default, it is 1, so if I will change it, for example, to 8 and apply changes, it will generate me missing LODs. It will generate me first till 7th LODs, and also my autocompute LOD distance is toggled on, so it will also automatically compute the distance on which this mesh will change its LODs. So let's wait a little bit. Here it is. Now it's on LOD1, LOD0. LOD1 is already 18,000 triangles. LOD2, 3, 4, and 5. And now let's move far from it. Now it is LOD0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not visible. These changes are not visible, by the way, but if you want, for example, LOD1 to start from a far distance, you can go here and find LOD picker. An LOD picker, you can select an LOD you want to edit, for example, LOD1, and here you have a field called screen size. By default, it is disabled. It is disabled because we have autocompute LOD distance checked. Let's uncheck it, and now we can edit a screen size. So if you want an LOD to start from a far distance, you decrease screen size. So I want an LOD to start on, now it starts when it is at such distance, but I want it to start at, for example, 0.2. I'm just typing 0.2, but I will not do that. That's it. Also, one more thing. If your LOD0 has too much triangles, but you want to start from LOD1, for example, you found that LOD1 looks perfect for you, and it has less triangles, and you don't want to render LOD1 in any case. You want to start from LOD1, then you can navigate to LOD settings and set minimum LOD from 0 to 1. Now it will always start from LOD1. It will never render LOD0. And let's turn it back. If you found that LOD1, for example, it has too much triangles and you expected that it will have less, you can also change it here on LOD1 settings. You have reduction settings. Here you have a base LOD and you have a percent triangles. So that means how it worked. It took LOD0 and removed 50% of the triangles. You can change this value to a less value and tap apply. It will regenerate your LOD. So that's how LODs work basically. Uh, Next about nanites, I'm not sure that there is something to tell about nanites. It's not very adjustable system. You can only turn on nanites and change a fallback mesh. So I don't think that you can configure it a lot. But I would like to mention that because of because nanite meshes render in a new rendering way, it's a new rendering technique. They not work correctly every time with instancing. So especially with hierarchical instance static meshes, because hierarchical instance static meshes are created for working with LODs. So if your PCG or foliage works in a strange way, your foliage starts to float in the air, to move somehow, then it is a problem with 90% that it is a problem with the nanite meshes, because nanite meshes works bad with instances, and also they work bad with world position of set sometimes, but sometimes everything works fine. So double check if you have such problems, whether you evaluate in world position of set for nanite mesh, and if you're using nanite mesh with an instancing. So that's all for this video, and thanks for watching. Hope it will help someone.